Poetry has its place on the screen, but it is in the imagery, in speech patterns, and in concepts, not the lines. The painful moment caught, the simple reaction that understates, or the rhythms of finely wrought language can be poetic. The genius of Shakespeare makes his plays acceptable in verse and Elizabethan vocabulary. But in general, American audiences are actually hostile to poetry. A few plays in free verse have been filmed. Maxwell Anderson's Winterset and High Tour, Dylan Thomas' Under the Milkwood, and T.S. Eliot's Murder in the Cathedral. A number of films have been adapted from poems, but not using the original poetry in the dialogue. The jazz poem The Setup by Joseph Moncure March, The Best Years of Our Lives, from a poem by McCanley Cantor and Longfellow's Hiawatha. A character may have a poetic spirit, but he or she rarely expresses himself in poetry, although a particular character in a particular script may indeed express himself in somewhat poetic fashion. Ours is not a time of beautiful language. Speech is increasingly ordinary, but rich in slang, in breadth of vocabulary, and in vividness. A glib and verbal character may develop patterns and rhythms in his dialogue which set him apart from other characters, as the dustman father of Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady. A poetic touch can be affected by repetition of words rather than metrical lines. This is The Elements of Screenwriting by Erwin R. Blacker. If you can find this book, it's not that easy to find. It's one of the best books ever written on screenwriting. I believe it was written in the late 80s. Read that book. Read Screenwriter's Bible if you ever want to be a screenwriter, because those are the best two books to read. Because we're not just going to discuss mostly movies, which is what we mostly discuss but we're also going to discuss books, reading, poetry. That's what this page originally started as. And you can do both. You can examine all the arts. We'll eventually get to music. We'll talk about that on a later episode. But right now, this is mostly movies, where we mostly discuss movies. Mostly, I'm your host, Dan Siri. And this is a short video. It's been a while since I've joined you guys, and I have missed you a great deal, my fans. I'm here to talk about the Oscars. The Academy Awards, in a nutshell, was originally started as a way to basically bust the unions. They did not want unions coming into Hollywood. So they used to have these meetings every year where the rich and famous would get together and talk about taking down the unions. And after that and dinner, they gave out these little gold statuettes, which are now called Oscars. I have a very complicated history with the Oscars. Of course, I grew up in the 80s, which was a pretty bad decade for the Oscars and the Academy Awards shows. And also the movies that won. Ordinary People. It beat Raging Bull. I like Chariots of Fire, but it beat Raiders of the Lost Ark and Reds. Gandhi beat E.T. and Tootsie, which are two of my favorite movies. So Gandhi's okay. It's one of those okay biopics. Most biopics are terrible. It's not terrible, but it's boring and it's long and it's pretty much drawn out, and you'd be better off reading a book about Gandhi. Terms of Endearment won in 1983. I do not remember the film. It's been a long time since I've watched it. It didn't matter anyway, because my favorite movie of 1983 was Scarface. 1984, okay, The Terminator's not even nominated. I went to, what did it go to, like Places in the Heart or something like that. I don't even know. I never saw Out of Africa in 1985. Platoon is a great film, but it's a very difficult film to watch. And when it came to 1986, I was more of an Aliens guy. But basically, the pattern that you saw was the movies that I liked as a young boy and as becoming a young man were not the movies that got Academy Awards. They usually reserved that for the quote-unquote serious movies, the movies that had some kind of a commentary. Then what happened was the ratings started to go bad. So in the 90s, things sort of changed. And they're like, okay, we got to start giving out awards to somewhat popular movies. And that's when the big blockbusters or movies like Titanic won Best Picture, or Forrest Gump wins Best Picture, Braveheart won Best Picture. Now, I'm not complaining. I love those films. I don't love Dances with Wolves. Goodfellas should have won Best Picture. It's just that simple. But the idea of art competing against art is very strange. Dances with Wolves is a very different film from Goodfellas. It's doing something completely different. Forrest Gump is very different from Pulp Fiction or The Shawshank Redemption. Ed Wood was not even nominated, and that's one of the best films of 1994. It's Tim Burton's masterpiece. But, you know, it's sort of a give and take with the Oscars. You can't expect your favorites to win or what you like to even be nominated. It's just one of those things that I won't say necessary evil, because I don't think of it as evil, but it's just one of those things that it's there and we have to pay attention to it. We can't ignore it, even if it pisses us off, which it kind of does most times, with me anyway. I mean, like, The Empire Strikes Back lost Best Original Score to Fame. Just let that hang there a little bit. Mark Rylance for Bridge of Spies beat Sylvester Stallone playing Rocky Balboa for the 7th time in Creed, which was, to me anyway, a culmination of his career as an artist and as an actor, and he is Rocky Balboa, and I felt like this was a great celebration of Rocky and his legacy. And it's, you know, it's just one of those things. You can't take it too seriously. I think the best thing to do is to try and watch it like watching a Super Bowl, where your teams are not in it. And you're just objectively watching it. You're just having fun. We used to have Oscar parties back in the day, but schedule-wise, it's been a little tricky to do that, get everybody together. But honestly, the last show that I kind of watched, almost all of it, I think the last show that I watched the whole thing was probably somewhere in the 2000s. I don't remember. I think the last time that my favorite movie of the year won Best Picture was Return of the King. You know, that's about 20 years ago now. So for 20 years, I feel that my taste and the Academy's taste have not lined up. So I've just tried to, like, mostly at this point, I just don't even watch the show anymore because the show is so long and boring. So what I tend to do is I'll tape it and I'll just fast forward through the highlights. I mean, last year, for example, I just happened to be coming home. I was with my fiance, love you, Carla. We were watching something else. We were just watching, you know, movies at her place. And I was coming home, and I happened to be coming home just as the infamous Will Smith moment happened at the Oscars, where he slapped Chris Rock across the face. And I just walk in and I'm like, yeah, the Oscars are on. I was just trying to walk into the next room because I want to avoid it. And then my dad goes, Dan, Chris Rock just got smacked in the face by Will Smith. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Something interesting happened at the Oscars? It's impossible. This isn't like it's the 90s anymore. But yeah, sure enough, right across the face. And again, this year, you know, it's on a Sunday night. I'm probably not going to watch. I actually like watching the Golden Globes. I like the BAFTAs. The Independent Spirit Awards are a lot of fun, too. I love those. And I usually DVR, and I will actually watch the whole program. But for the Oscars, I just can't sit through it. It's very, very painful. But we have some nominees to go through, which I put in the show notes. And I'm going to quickly describe basically, you know, where we're at with this. Let me just see here. I think one of the last times that I almost had my faith restored in the Oscars was 2016, because I really thought La La Land was going to win Best Picture, because I absolutely love La La Land. It's not just the best movie of 2016. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's an instant classic. Brilliant, brilliant movie. And it wins Best Picture, and I'm like, this is great. And it was so nice to see Bonnie and Clyde up there on stage, Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty giving away the award. And it was La La Land, and this is great. This is going to be awesome. And then all of a sudden, it turns into this embarrassing, weird moment where it turns out that Moonlight won Best Picture. And I didn't like that the guys from La La Land were very rude to Warren Beatty. You know, they were sort of treating him like he was a doddering old man, and that's Warren freaking Beatty, man. You know, this guy is a living legend. Okay, maybe hasn't made a movie in a long time, and he hasn't made a movie I cared about in a very long time, but you do not disrespect him. Who are these people? It's this new Hollywood that's the reason why movies mostly suck today, mostly. Because they have no reverence or reference for classic cinema. This is the problem that we're having today. You know, you have a generation of film critics now who think The Fifth Element is a great science fiction movie. This is where we are. This is scary. You need to have a good, strong, if you're going to work in any industry, especially cinema, you need to have some kind of a knowledge of what came before, and you have respect. And that was pretty disgraceful. And I think in that moment, I says, I don't think I'll ever watch a full Oscar telecast again. Never. I would never do it, even if I was nominated, which is not happening. But, you know, my last screenplay was about zombies and gangsters, and I don't think that's going to put us in the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion anytime soon. So blah, 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 going through, yeah, they all sucked. In my lifetime, this is the other thing, too. You think about Best Picture, and not to mention all the other awards that they get wrong. In my lifetime, I've only agreed with the Best Picture win 5 times. There have been times I've been fine with it. Like, okay, I want Pulp Fiction to win Best Picture in 1994, but it's not going to win Best Picture in 1994. It's going to go to Forrest Gump. Fine with that. Silver Linings Playbook is not going to beat Argo. Fine. I liked Argo a lot. I completely understand it. But Shakespeare in Love beating Saving Private Ryan was a bit much. But 1991, Silence of the Lambs, great film. That deserved Best Picture. And that was back when Best Picture sort of meant something. And I felt like, great. They didn't give it to Goodfellas last year, which was a very deserving film. But at least in 91, they got it, they got it right. Silence of the Lambs is a very pivotal film for me, too. I saw the movie when I was 12. I was not allowed. Luckily, we were friends with the librarian by my school. And me and my brother would walk there sometimes. And she let us rent R-rated movies. And I, again, was very chicken. I didn't see a lot of horror movies growing up. Everything scared me. And I knew this movie was going to scare me, but I wanted to watch it anyway. And I still, to this day, even though I became a huge horror fanatic after that, this was the movie that was sort of my gateway into horror films, even though it's not officially a horror film. It was just such a disturbing, such a powerful experience to watch that film. Another Best Picture win that was my favorite film of 1993, Schindler's List. A masterpiece in every sense of the word. Spielberg's use of black and white, fantastic photography. First time we worked with Janusz Kaminski and John Williams. I mean, come on. The guy's a genius. He's the co-director of every Spielberg film. The ones that he scored. I think there's 1 or 2 he didn't do. Color Purple and Ready Player One. Maybe something else. I think The Post was done by Al Silvestri, but who cares about The Post? Spielberg's really important stuff is scored by John Williams. Like 1941. No, just kidding. 1941 is not good. 1995 was Braveheart. Braveheart was a movie that I personally loved. I went crazy for this film. I didn't think it was going to get anywhere with critics, with audiences. But it ended up winning Best Picture, which I was very surprised, and I was very happy at that moment. Then 1997, we had Titanic, which, yes, it was my favorite movie in 1997. I know people are going to laugh because they're like, oh, we thought you were into serious movies, and you would go with L.A. Confidential or The Ice Storm. L.A. Confidential is great. The Ice Storm is great. The Sweet Hereafter is great. Good Will Hunting is great. Those are all great movies. Boogie Nights is an incredible film, but Titanic just got me. It was Jim Cameron, who up until that point could do no wrong in my book, and then we'll talk about that another time. It isn't so much the films that he made. It's not so much Avatar or Avatar 2. It's the silly stuff he says on the interviews in the last few years. So let's quickly go through the nominees. Supporting actor, Brendan Gleeson for Banshees of something or other. Banshees of Inisherin, I know. Tyree Henry for Causeway, never heard of it. Judd Hirsch for The Fablemans. Judd Hirsch is in this movie? I never even saw the movie, so I do want to see it. It's on my list. Somebody for Banshees of Inisherin, and Kehu Kwan for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. EEOOA. Great film. His performance is amazing. He's pretty much got the award. He's just going to walk away with it. Fantastic performance and very well deserved. If he loses, I'll be really, really upset. For supporting actress, Angela Bassett for Wakanda Forever. Kerry Condon for Banshees of Inisherin. Jamie Lee Curtis for EEAO. Stephanie Hsu for EEAO. And Hong Chow for The Whale. Okay. I felt that Jamie Lee Curtis did give an award nomination performance this year, but it was not in this film. It was in Halloween Ends. A lot of people hate that movie, but I think it would have been a nice capper on her career to maybe give her a nomination for that film. Not like she's going to win. I believe that the winner of this award is going to be Stephanie Hsu for Everything Everywhere All at Once. This, I've seen her in maybe one or two other things. I didn't know her too well. She was phenomenal in this film. Very well deserved. I kind of would like to see Angela Bassett win. I didn't see Wakanda Forever. Again, I had a complaint last year about movies being way too long. Like I say, if it's more than 2 hours, it better be great. And if it's about approaching 3 hours, it better be a masterpiece. And I just wasn't getting the masterpiece vibe from Wakanda Forever. I'll catch it on Disney Plus, and I'm sure it's fine. And I'm sure she's phenomenal because Angela Bassett is a fantastic actress. And I felt that a movie she was in, Angela Bassett, that all of you should see. Again, it never had a proper Blu-ray release, or even, I don't even think it's been released in anamorphic widescreen. Strange Days with Ralph Fiennes and Angela Bassett. I thought they were both great. Somebody who I think really deserved a nomination for Best Actor was Ralph Fiennes for The Menu. And I think he was also in Strange Days. He completely got overlooked because his performance in The Menu was great. I had my issues with the ending, but I do enjoy the film very much. Best Director. Oh, did I skip actor and actress? Actors. Cate Blanchett for Tar, Ana de Armas for Blonde. Somebody for To Leslie. I can't read my terrible, terrible writing, and I'm supposed to be an author. And Michelle Williams for The Fablemans as Mama Spielberg. It's creepy how much she looks like Spielberg's mom, even the hair and everything. I'm like, oh, this is strange. I do want to see that movie, though. It looked a little precious to me, but I still want to see it. I think Michelle Yeoh, though, who I forgot to mention, Michelle Yeoh, her performance and Everything Everywhere is amazing. I've been a fan of her since Tomorrow Never Dies, and I kind of hope she wins. I think her and Keith will be their night. Best Actor, Brendan Fraser for The Whale, Austin Butler for Elvis, Colin Farrell for Banshees of Inisherin, Bill Nighy for Living, Paul Mescal for After Sun. What's After Sun? I never even heard of it. I think the award is going to go to Colin Farrell. I didn't see the Banshees movie, but I don't think he ever won, as far as I can remember. So maybe I think he has a shot. Director, we have Martin McDonagh for The Banshees, Spielberg for The Fablemans, Daniel Kwan and Scheinert, Daniels for EEAO, Todd Field for Tar, Ruben Ostlund for Triangle of Sadness. I think the award is actually going to go to Daniels. I think Daniels are going to win it. And that leads me to Best Picture. You can kind of see where this is going. Tar, Avatar 2, Women Talking, The Fablemans, Triangle of Sadness. I didn't see those movies. I didn't see Banshees of Inisherin. I did see Everything Everywhere All at Once, EEAO. Great movie. Very strange, not your typical type of movie. To me, it was sort of like as strange and original as Cloud Atlas, but with more humor and martial arts. And that's always a plus, as far as I'm concerned. You add humor and violence to a movie, and I'm pretty much, I'll watch it. I'll sit through it. Women Talking, I didn't see that movie either. I mentioned that already. All Quiet on the Western Front is a very, very well-made war movie. It's very depressing, very painful to watch. I don't think I could ever sit through it again. It's even more terrifying and more hurtful because it's in the original German, like the book was. And it seems more real because it's in German. I've seen the original All Quiet on the Western Front, and I read sections of the book. I've got to read the whole book. but it seems just so real and so painful to watch, and it's extremely violent and extremely depressing, but that's the point. It's supposed to be. It's worth seeing, but I don't think it'll win. I don't think war movies win Best Picture anymore. I don't think the last war movie to win Best Picture, I can't even remember. Saving Private Ryan and Thin Red Line came close. Both films are fantastic, by the way, especially Thin Red Line. I think it gets overlooked. But war movies do not win Best Picture. Hacksaw Ridge was a great war film. But as I get older, war movies are harder and harder for me to watch. I don't enjoy watching them anymore. As much as I love violent movies and horror movies, real world violence, especially, perpetrated on young people or the innocent, really doesn't sit well with me. And then we have two more movies. We have Elvis and we have Top Gun. Well, Elvis is your standard musical biopic, but Baz Luhrmann does add a little bit of the flair to it. It's a very depressing movie. I find the John Carpenter Elvis film with Kurt Russell to be much better. This was very strange. The pacing was slow, and then it was fast, and then it was slow. Tom Hanks, it's hard to dislike Tom Hanks or find him unlikable. So even though he does horrendous things in this movie, I'm still kind of like, well, I can't hate Tom Hanks. It's tricky. But it's a downer. It's a downbeat movie. It's your standard, cradle to grave biopic, more or less. Biopics most of the time do not work. They're good for actors and they're good for performances. And the performances by both Austin Butler and Tom Hanks are fantastic in this movie. But the movie is just a downer. And I don't really feel like seeing it more than once. Even though it was well made and I thought it was pretty good. And then Top Gun is also nominated. Top Gun was my favorite film of last year. I'm going to release the favorites list as soon as I see a couple more movies. I still have to see Tar, The Fabelmans, and a few others. But Top Gun was my favorite. And it's not even that it was the best movie. I think it's not even the greatest movie of last year. But what I love about it and why it's my favorite is that it just brought back a lot of memories, a lot of nostalgia. It really made us think of the 80s and the good old days and stuff. And that was why I really, found it very, very, just very charming is a good word, And I actually liked it more than the original. The original to me is a classic by default, meaning it's only a classic because it came at a time where we didn't have the big heavy hitters in the first half of the 80s. The first 4 or 5 years of the 80s had some real heavy hitters. Then you get from like 86 to 89, it's sort of diluted. And there are some great movies of the late 80s, don't get me wrong, especially RoboCop, The Untouchables, Evil Dead 2, Raising Arizona. But for the most part, mainstream movies were getting 280s for me. And Top Gun is very much an 80s film. But Top Gun Maverick was really, it ranks with Blade Runner 2049, The Muppets from 2011, and Tron Legacy as one of the best legacy sequels around. And Ghostbusters would be a part of that group. Unfortunately, the only unfortunate issue I have with the last Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is a great film, and yes, there was some ugly tears at the end when certain cameos happened to drop in. The only problem with Ghostbusters is too much of the last half of that movie apes the original movie, and it's too much like that. So I think the winner, though, is going to be Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think it's just a movie that it has this energy to it, and it has a certain, it's one of those movies you watch and you're thinking about it a couple of days. The same thing with The Menu. And not a lot of movies from 2022 can you say, after it ended, I was thinking about it for days. Most movies these days, but most movies of 2022, even the good ones, were sort of like a nice ice cream. Like, you enjoy it while you're watching it, and then it completely leaves, and you have no memory of it. Whereas this, it really resonated. So that's my thoughts on the Oscars. There's going to be a couple more videos. I'm going to be doing my best of the year, worst of the year, and purgatory of the year. Purgatory are films that are not quite good, but there's something interesting about them, and I do want to discuss them. They were not films that I enjoyed, but they were films that did reach me on some level and are worth discussing. So like like a great film is like Batman Begins, but a purgatory film is like Batman Returns. Batman Returns has amazing moments in it, but it has so many awful moments in it. But it's still worth discussing because you could still see that even though the vision didn't quite win me over, there's definitely a vision, a strong vision behind it, as opposed to just a bad movie. Like Batman Forever is just a bad movie with very, probably no redeeming qualities at all. But Batman Returns, which is also a film I don't like, is still worth discussing more than just a bad movie, you know? And that's where we get in films like, let's say, Clerks 3. Yeah. It's a film that did not win me over, but there were certain aspects of it that really, really got to me. And I will discuss it on a later episode. But that's been mostly movies. And remember, life's like a movie, write your own ending.